I figured out the true endgame of Emo's diabolical master plan, and let me just tell you, it is terrifying. I'm also gonna say something truly wild here because I'm confident that ironically, Emo's ultimate plan may also end up being perfect for the Straw Hats. And the way that I see it, there are three phases to this plan. First, Emo wants to control the entire world, and then their goal is to flood the entire world. Which turns out is not completely counterproductive because it will be essential for step number 3, remaking the world in their perfect own image. Alright, but how in the world are they gonna actually do that? Well, strap in, because once you finish this video, you're gonna know exactly what's going on here. And step 1 is taking control of the entire world, which is actually pretty easy considering that they've pretty much already achieved that. I mean, as you know, in One Piece, the world government does quite literally control most of the world already, you know, like 99% of it. But you see, there's this little annoying thing called pirates that throw a really big wrench into Emo's plans. After all, Emo's ancient enemy was Joy Boy, the world's first pirate, according to Vegapunk, but also Emo's plans for controlling the world have a much deeper reason, I think, than just pure power. Emo wants to wipe pirates and the remnants of the ancient kingdom from the world once and for all entirely. And so the whole world government system, including the Marines, the Holy Knights, the Warlords, even the Seraphim now, are all just one tiny piece in Emo's big plan here, and they're a crucial piece because Emo was absolutely terrified that their plan would never come true unless it had enough time to fully develop. And you might now be thinking that because they are a super powerful godlike being, they'd be able to rule the world by sheer force, but obviously, as we can all see, they don't really do that, leading me to think that they probably can't. And so let's take a look at all of the things that they have really done to figure out why Emo needed to control the entire world the way that they ended up doing. Because, like, really, why do you even need the Marines for this big plan? Because if they're really this all-powerful being on their own, and with the Gorosei and the Holy Knights, you know, they should barely even need the Marines to begin with. So I think that it has something to do with the fact that Emo wants to be completely secret and something that no one knows about. You know, other than the Gorosei and a very few other select individuals, no one even knows that Emo is the secret real ruler of the One Piece world. Instead, they kind of puppeteer the Marines to pretend like they control the world, while Emo actually rules the empty throne from the shadows. And of course, moreover, the Marines also keep the pirates in check through the entire bounty system and actively protecting the world from evil pirates. But you probably realize that this is far from the only way that Emo has been trying to control the entire world though, because they are straight up making sailing completely obsolete. And it all comes down to bridges. Do you remember this crazy thing, like this magnificent feat of architecture? Well, it's a gigantic bridge that's a country that the world government has been building for 700 years straight. And there is not just one. We found out that there are 4 of them, all named after an alcohol: tequila, bourbon, vodka, and rum wolf. And let me say, these are insanely mysterious and we don't really know anything about them except that they must be very important. So I don't know, maybe all 4 bridges will just intersect at the top secret Long Island iced tea wolf thing, or more likely at the Holy Land Marijoa, so that the celestial dragons will have unrestricted travel without needing the oceans at all across the planet. Like, if you really think about it, there is literally no better way to control the One Piece world than to be able to travel freely without the fear of bandits or pirates or the need for ships to cross anywhere and go any place. Because it literally negates every chance of pirates attacking you or stealing your resources. So if we wanted to boil it down to a really simple phrase, bridge equals control. And now that Emo controls the world, it is time for step number 2, flood the entire world. And the world has already been flooded in the ancient past, probably not just once, but multiple times. But it does seem like there were, in the end, still way too many survivors for Emo's own liking. Luckily, as far as we know, they do still have an ancient weapon that they can use to wipe entire islands straight off the map with a brushstroke and raise the sea levels around the entire globe. Unluckily though for them, it has been all out of juice, which is exactly why Emo needed the ability to power this weapon of mass destruction, and in a kind of unfortunate and terrible twist of fate, Luffy might end up playing right into Imu's hands here. Because the drums of liberation, you know, the sound that Luffy's heartbeat makes when he goes into Gear 5th, that sound we have now seen multiple times is capable of powering up ancient technology like the giant robot in Egghead Island. So this could have been what Imu has been chasing for all these hundreds of years. They wanted the Nika fruit and someone who can use it to power all of this ancient tech to really get their plan in motion. We even know that the government has searched for it for 800 years straight ever since Joy Boy's time, but it always kind of managed to escape them. But now, the Nika power is active and ready in the middle of everything, so uh-oh. Is Luffy really gonna be the final piece in Imu's plan? Is he actually being used? Well, that's one possibility that we'll discuss here in this video as well, but as we learned in Egghead Island, Vegapunk has now also created the so-called Mother Flame as an alternative to the ancient power source known as the Eternal Flame. And man, let me just say, it does seem to work just fine for Imu, because we saw that when they used the Mother Flame to power the ancient weapon to destroy the entire island of Lulusia. So yeah, as far as we can tell, the world is pretty screwed right now that Imu has access to this crazy technology, which is exactly why Imu is finally ready now to move to the next big part of their plan, which, you know, they had to wait 800 years for, flooding everything once again. Now hold up, why would Imu want to destroy the world that they already successfully rule? Isn't that like kind of going against the #1 rule in the Evil Dictator Handbook? This is a pretty legitimate question, right? So let's dive into it, starting with the whole concept of the celestial dragons that Imu built around them. And now, no point beating around the bush, all of these people here are freaks, no doubt about that, but they just happen to be God Imu's chosen freaks. You know, the people that he thinks deserve to survive up in the Holy Land together with him. Although I gotta say, I personally can't really figure that one out. Like, you really want to party with these guys? No thanks. Personally, I'm good, but a god figure having a chosen people is exactly what happens in mythologies all over the world. So if you think back to some historical references, you can pretty easily find the story of the massive flood and Noah's Ark from the Christian Bible, but pretty much in, you know, mythology all across the world. I think I read somewhere once that there's over 200 flood myths in, you know, human history. Now, if you don't know the story, God or the gods decide, you know, that the world is full of corruption and evil and decide to wipe everyone out with a giant flood. As a result, everyone dies except for God's chosen people, who he of course, you know, sneakily warned ahead of time. And if you ask me, that seems to be exactly what is happening right here. Like, Imu has a weapon that can wipe out entire islands and cause sea levels to rise in like an instant, and now he has seemingly unlimited access to a power source to use this weapon all across the world. I would say that that's probably exactly why Imu has waited this long to really enact on this plan. I mean, they needed to construct the giant bridges so that they would have a monopoly on traveling the world after this, and needed to find a method to power Uranus after the fall of the ancient kingdom's advanced technology. And by the way, let me just say that I offer a lot better stuff to people who support me on Patreon than Imu does to their people. Like, they get tons of bonus content and access to artwork and all that stuff, and I don't flood the entire world. So if you want to support the channel and don't miss out on that stuff, go check it out. But my point here is, having a master plan is great and all, but we just learned that Imu's original plan got totally screwed up. Yeah, because Gunko here in chapter 1146 actually revealed to us that Imu was originally gonna wipe everyone out without anyone ever knowing, but since certain scholars figured out some of the true history and shared it with the world, I'm talking about characters like Professor Clover and Robin's mom Olvia, who we see in this chapter, both who were scholars on the island of Ohara, all of these people really kicked off the research into poneglyphs and the ancient history. But even though some people knew what was going on, that still wasn't enough to really ruin Imu's plan, until Vegapunk here went completely rogue and broadcasted his own research to the entire world. And this, I think, is a key point. What Vegapunk's message really did was give people time to prepare here, because if you know that the world is going to be flooded, now you suddenly have some time to find high ground, construct ships, I guess, and so on and so forth, and there are plenty of great places that do have high ground in the One Piece world. We're talking about places like the capital city of Alabasta, built on a hill here, or the mountains here on Drum Island. Almost every island that we've been to has some high ground people can flee to, and the whole freaking nation of Wano is basically way up above the sea already. There's of course also Elbaf and the Sky Islands. There's the giant ship Noah that can probably carry straight up hundreds of thousands, if not even millions of people if necessary. So these are all places and means that people could use to survive a worldwide flood. And so now all the people of the world who believe Vegapunk's message have time to get to any of these places or something similar, which for Emu means time for plan B now. Because if anyone but the Celestial Dragon survive, that will completely ruin the third part of Emu's plan that we'll discuss next here. But first, now that we know that people can survive Emu's plan to flood the world, I think we can finally make sense of the insane relationship between the former king of the giants, Harold, and the world government. Now you might be wondering why I'm suddenly throwing a random character like Harold in here, but you'll see why it matters. Because I'll be straight up with you, Harold's whole mystery plot in Elbaf has been a bit of a roller coaster. Now I think I figured out pretty early on that he did have some sort of deal with the Holy Knights and the world government, but now we do know why Emu wanted to cut a deal to begin with. Emu needed powerful soldiers. More soldiers than he already has, so that if his original plan failed, which it kind of now already has, then he would have an army to wipe out all the people that he didn't want to get saved from the flood anyway, and that he didn't want in this new era. And what better soldiers to get than an army of the most powerful warriors on the One Piece planet, the Giants, because they're certainly better than any other of your average marine soldiers. And yes, I know some of us kind of like to hate on the Giants because most of them aren't that strong compared to the top tier characters of the story, but still, I mean, your average giant is still washing hundreds of regular people with no trouble whatsoever. But on top of that, there are also so many other questions here that I honestly am still kind of trying to wrap my head around. For instance, we know from Vegapunk's research that the sea level has risen twice before in the past. So does that mean that Emu has tried his master plan twice before and failed 2 times, kind of? Like, what's going on with all of that? Like, what was the deal with these past floods? I do have some ideas for sure, like the Gorosei said that it was time for yet another great cleansing, remember in this panel here, so clearly they do know that his plan has happened in the past before. So maybe Emu was the one who flooded the world twice, but didn't have the ability to fulfill the last part of his big plan. Like, could he have been missing one particular piece of the puzzle that he didn't have until now? Luffy. A person who has inherited the will and power of Joy Boy and finally awakened the Nika fruit for the first time after 800 years. Emu in fact might just see it as poetic justice to use his ancient enemy, the D-Clan, to finally bring his plan to full and perfect fruition. I mean, just look at this. Emu has all the power in the world, but for some reason he needs to throw a fit and chop up a bunch of photos here. To me, this is giving seriously troubled individual vibes, not sure if you'd agree, and that's not even mentioning the giant portrait that he has got hanging around in his secret little garden. Like, what's their deal here? Did they have a secret crush on Vivi's ancestor Lily before she then betrayed the rest of the 20 kings, or was it even deeper than that? Because as we learned also in the manga, Lily and her whole families are members of the D-Clan, just like the other characters in the bounty posters that they chopped up as well. So does he really just hate the D-Clan? I mean, he told us that the D was the moniker of his ancient enemy, and that would make sense if they've been their enemy all along, but I do think it's actually more complex than just that. Like I've theorized in this video right here, that Emu, Joy Boy, and Lily might have all been friends before Emu then betrayed them potentially. And so with that in mind, allow me to break down my ultimate conclusion for Emu's diabolical plan for you. Starting with the fact that Emu and water don't really get along. We already talked about that, but it goes even deeper than that. Because do you remember where we first met Emu? In their garden. Do you know when we've ever seen Emu showing something that resembles kindness? Well, in their garden when they held this butterfly. Like, this dude or dudess really seems to love nature and earth. I might even call them the earth god that we learned about in the Harley text. There's actually a ton of stuff connecting them to the earth. And so why in the world would they want to flood the entire world and make more of the thing that they despise so much? First off, that's a great question, but the answer to it is, I think that they don't. I think that they really want to get get rid of all the water. Yeah, all of it, but only after it has killed all their enemies by flooding the world and wiping out the rest in an all-out war. Which I hope you think agree would make a lot of sense, but if you're still skeptical here and saying, this is crazy, Imo floods the world and then just drains the water right after, that would just be like two calamities in one, like why not just do one big one? But really, it's not that strange, I think, if you look at it from a historical perspective. First, in the Bible story, the flood waters did go away after a long time and the people restarted their life on a new Earth. Even in One Piece history, we do know that the world wasn't always covered in water like it is today. In fact, there are theories that the world was once a single giant continent like the real world's Pangea, which, oh, would you look at that, is also the name of Imu's giant castle. And so I like to say that it's not really that much of a stretch to say that Imu would probably want to transform the world back to how it was in the past. We don't know if they were already around there, but we do see a character like Imu in the first world on the Harley, so maybe they just want to return things to how they originally were when they were ruling over the earth. Also, having no water gets rid of Imu's worst enemies because pirates only exist because there is water to sail around on. Pirates have their crazy amount of power because they can sail wherever they want, and it's nearly impossible to stop them unless you also have top-tier sailing and fighting skills. That's why in the One Piece world, being a pirate means you can have complete freedom, and you might think that flooding the world would just make it easier for pirates to exist, but if all the islands just straight up become submerged, then good luck to the pirates if they're unable to stop at any islands to stock up on supplies or have a home base or anything. But if Imo gets rid of all of the water and all the people that they don't want to save, and all of a sudden Imu can create his own perfect little paradise on a new island with his chosen people, a theme, by the way, that a lot of One Piece villains have, creating this utopia for themselves, I think that that would make a lot of sense. And to stick with the biblical themes here, it's like they're trying to recreate the perfect Garden of Eden. You know, much like the garden that we often see Imu chilling in and where we speculate that the sunlight tree Eve is located. But the real question I want you to ask now is, how would they even drain all that water? It's not like they can just make it disappear, right? Well, we do have some massive holes in the ocean like the one at Enies Lobby and now in Lulusia. And while we, yes, do know that the water rose actually after Lulusia was destroyed, it is possible that there's more that we still don't know about these holes. I mean, in so many ways, they're just so weird. How is all that water going down and then not filling up that hole? So don't be surprised if these turn out to be a huge part of actually draining the oceans in the future. And that just leaves us with a hugely important question here. If Imu has flooded the world in the past, why didn't they actually try to drain it before? Like, why wait until now? Did he not manage to wipe out everyone that they wanted to? Or is there maybe even another reason? Like, obviously this is all speculation and could be wrong, but based on everything that we know about prophecy in One Piece and the three worlds in the Harley text hinting at this final big war that then finally saves the world and ushers in a new era, I'd like to think that there is something here this time that has never been there for Imu before. And you wanna guess what that is? Yeah, it is gonna be Luffy for sure, because we do know that Roger was waiting for the right time. Joy Boy also seemed to leave behind the tools and information for the right person to come along once again. And now hold on, you might be thinking, wait, Luffy being here is gonna help Imu? What? Well, let's think about it this way. How does Luffy play into all of this? Really think about it. All throughout the story, Luffy and his enemies are actually not really that different. Luffy is quite destructive. He tears down kingdoms and reduces entire cities to rubble. He is the Joy Boy that Kaido wanted to be or to awaken. He is the god or sun god that NL positioned himself to be as well. He will do anything for his comrades, just like a villain like Lucci would do anything for his sense of justice. What I'm saying is, Luffy is not all that different from being a bad guy, and in a really twisted way, Imu probably kind of sees themselves as the good guy in this entire story. But, of course, you and me both know that the major difference between Luffy and his enemies is that Luffy does it for all the right reasons. He destroys stuff to give freedom to others, and he destroys entire cities like Alabasta and Dressrosa to free them from evil pirates. He tore down Enies Lobby to save Robin. He demolished the Noah because it was gonna crush the entire nation of Fishman Island. You get the idea. So all I'm saying here is that Imu's plan might very well work out in the end, but maybe it'll actually be Luffy and his friends who end up making the world a place where everyone can be free instead of Imu's. In other words, Imu's plan to remake the world will actually happen, but it may be not in his, but instead in Luffy's image instead. At least that's the conclusion that I came to, because there simply has to be a massive change to the entire One Piece Luffy's world at the end of the story, right? And now that we know about the Harley text and see how the world has gone through these two major upheavals in the past, or maybe even more, all these cycles, I just kind of feel like there has to be a massive global change in the world at the end of the story. After all, the text literally says they will surely meet again, implying that the Earth God and the Sun God might actually change the world for the better and unite its people in a way that Imu could not ever see coming. But there is still one more piece to this puzzle that we may have been missing this entire time. Let me ask you this. Do you think Imu has a kid or any relatives? Because if they did, what if they're doing all of this to create a better world for that kid? And to take this even one step further, what if I told you that that kid could have been someone from the Straw Hats? Like, what if it's Nami? Well, if you want to really understand why that might be the case and how it would play into everything we've talked about today, you should really check out this video right here where we talk about all the Straw Hats' potential special lineage. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and an extra special thanks to all the people on Patreon supporting the channel, and I will see you in the next video.